Now when we moves further, now let's understand the type of rocks, classification of rocks. The major, when you look at the major rocks which is present are the igneous, sedimentary and metamorphic. Okay. Now there are three major rocks which is present in the earth is igneous, sedimentary and metamorphic. The igneous rocks, when you look at the root word from where it is originated, it originates from the word igneous. What is the meaning of igneous through which this word is originated? Okay, the word is igneous. IGNIS. Igneous means what? Fire. So not exactly it is originated from fire, but it is originated from the molten rocks, that is magma. When the magma solidified, it forms what? It forms the igneous rocks. But the root word through which this term is originated is the igneous. Igneous means the fire. So what it represents, that igneous rocks are basically the first rocks which forms. It is known as parental rocks or the primary rocks. It is also known as primary or parental rocks. Parental rocks, and these rocks are formed as a result of magmatic solidification of lava and the magma. Okay. Now another rocks are known as sedimentary. When you look at sedimentary, the sedimentary rocks are made up of the igneous rocks as well as metamorphic rocks and the sedimentary rocks itself. सेडिमेंट्री रॉक्स भी वेदर्ड होकर और नए सेडिमेंट्री रॉक्स बनाते हैं. मेटामॉर्फिक रॉक्स से भी सेडिमेंटेशन होकर हाउ इट फॉर्म्स. ओके, सो in the depression or in the geosynclines, when you look at the existing rocks, when weathered and erode, it deposited in the depression or in the lowland or in a geosyncline, and the sediment started depositing. Further continuous deposition of the sediments, what it led to, when you look at the different layers of the sediment when accumulate in this depression, the overlying layers impose pressure, the incumbent pressure over the underlying rocks. So the pressure imposed by the overlying rocks under the underlying rocks, and due to which what happened, the solidification takes place. So due to incumbent pressure, later I will give you a detailed idea, but just for introduction point, due to the incumbent pressure of overlying layers, on underlying layers, what it led to? Solidification, or the most appropriate word is lithification. Lithification. And as a result of this lithification, a rocks is formed. ये धीरे धीरे क्या हो जाते हैं? Compacts होने लगते हैं, lithify होने लगते हैं, solidify, and what, as a result of which a rock is formed, which we called sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks. What are the important feature of the sedimentary rocks is the layered structure, and that's why they are also known as stratified rocks. stratified rocks. Strata means layer. So it is known as stratified rocks, sedimentary rocks. Another feature, when you look at igneous rocks, the origin is magmatic. What is the origin? Magmatic. So what we find here, the magma is very hot. So here the fossils presence is improbable. When you look at the fossils, is absent in the igneous rocks. But when you look at the sedimentary rocks, here the fossils are present. There is a chances that when these rocks were formed over this, say, the lowest layer, if some species are living during that period of time, and over that species, if the new sediments accumulate, few species died and they fossilized. So in the sedimentary rocks, what we find, the fossils, the presence of the fossils. And further, when you look at the present rock system, what we find here, due to the fossilizations, these rocks are the source of the fossil fuels. These rocks are source of the fossil fuels. Sedimentations like petroleums, natural gases, coal, when you look at, these are the sources of. Now metamorphic, it is originate from the word metamorphosis, means change. Change. What we find here, how this rock evolved, the rock evolved due to change in the properties of the igneous. It originated from the igneous rocks or the sedimentary rocks or from the metamorphic itself. Okay. So when the sedimentary rocks change their compositions, it metamorphoses, and how this change takes place due to different factors. Okay, several factors lead to that changes. So I am talking about some environmental factors, or otherwise, so sometimes orogenetic processes which is going on. Orogenetic processes means the mountain building processes, or compression. This compression led to the changes in the composition of the rocks which is present over the crust and led to a formation of new rocks. We called it metamorphic rocks. Okay. So say for example the limestone converted into the marble. Okay. So this conversion here. So sometimes the sedimentary rocks converted into the what? The metamorphic rocks, or the igneous rocks converted into the metamorphic rocks, what we observe here. So you should keep in mind that the rocks are interchangeable. That's why what I have said, that later I will explain the rock cycle, where what we find, what we observe, that rock is interchangeable. Okay. So these are the three major groups of rocks: the igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic. Now, as I have said, a detailed study is required to all these rocks. Let's understand, let's begin our study from the igneous rocks. Understand the few important features of the igneous rock. Okay. What I have said, igneous rocks are the product of how it forms, the magma and the lava solidification of the molten material. So what I have written here, the definition as well as characteristics feature of the igneous rocks. So the igneous rocks, as I have said, originate from the word ignis. means the fire. So what it represent that these materials, these rocks are made up of the heated materials, and what are the heated material? That is the lava or the magma. So what I have said, that formed by the cooling and solidification of the molten rocks, that is the magma. Okay, and from where the magma erupt over the crust? From the interior of the earth. So this magma is coming from the interior of the earth to the surface, and this magma, when comes over the surface in the form of volcano, the lava erupts. When the lava gets solidified, this lava forms the igneous rocks. Igneous rocks. Okay, but sometimes, as I have said, that during the movement of the magma, sometimes the magma solidified within the crust, and they forms the intrusive volcanic rock, or we also called plutonic rocks. So sometimes the magma erupt over the surface of the crust. We called that is lava, because the magma having the other materials I had discussed in detail in the previous lecture. Why we called lava? Because lava having the water vapor, the gases, the pyroclastic or fragmental materials, okay, the acids, etc., with the magma or the molten rocks, and they have the small rock particles like cinders and all. Okay, that's why we called that materials which erupt over the surface as lava. So what we find, that this igneous rocks are of basically, through this classification we can stated that, through this definition we can state that the igneous rocks are of two types. One is over the earth crust, when the lava erupt and solidified and cools, it forms the what? Extrusive igneous rocks. But when the lavas or the magma gets solidified and cools within the crust, it forms the intrusive igneous rocks or the plutonic rocks. But basically these rocks are made up of what? The molten material, that is the magma or the lava. Now when you look at another features, what we observed, that largely the igneous rocks are crystalline structure. Okay, crystalline structure. That's why the igneous rocks are very hard. And sometimes, so when you look at what I have said, that it is crystalline structure known as primary rocks or the parental rocks. Why? Because after the creation of the earth, it was the first rock which forms. That's why we called it the parental rocks, because other rocks like sedimentary and metamorphic generated from these igneous rocks. Okay, they forms by the igneous rocks. So that's why they are known as parental or the primary rock system. Now crystalline, this crystalline structure, मैं बताऊंगा कि क्यों नहीं, क्योंकि हर जगह इसलिए नहीं पाया जाता क्योंकि इससे और बाकी जगह दूसरी तरह की चट्टानें बन गई हैं, इसलिए नहीं पाया जाता। क्योंकि अभी मैंने कहा कि इन्हीं रॉक से, इसी इग्नियस रॉक से ही बाकी दूसरे रॉक सिस्टम्स का भी फॉर्मेशन हुआ है, और अभी वो भी जो रॉक सिस्टम है वो भी ऑल्टर करते हैं, चेंज करते हैं। इसलिए हर जगह पृथ्वी के क्रस्ट के ऊपर केवल इग्नियस रॉक्स आज के टाइम में नहीं है। ओके, so crystalline structure, when you look at the crystals are arranged in a particular shape and in a particular distance, and it gives a different shapes to the rocks, and it provide the hardness. So when you look at the igneous rocks, basically the igneous rocks are resistant to erosional agents. Erosional agents. Largely when you look at these rocks, few rocks are softer, so few igneous rocks are softer. Say when you look at granite is very resistant. But when you compare with the basalt is comparatively softer. आप इसको dig कर सकते हैं spade से, ठीक है ना? You can use the spade and dig out the basalt, but granite is very hard. So यहाँ पे भी variation होता है, but largely all these crystalline structure, igneous rocks are crystalline in structure and generally hard and resistant. So इसके hardness और resistance के कारण what they are impermeable also. When you look at the sealed region, okay, or the cratonic region, cratons जो बनाते हैं वो igneous rocks हैं. That is what these are impermeable. Water percolation नहीं होता. So underground water recharge problem है. For example, the Bundelkhand niche region अगर जाओगे, और Telangana Nishik region, when you look at, the rocks are very resistant and hard, and hardly we find the percolation of water, okay, because the crystals are compactly arranged and there is no gap through which the water percolates, because water percolate through permeability and porosity. Later I will explain. These rocks are largely impermeable in structure, and that's why what we find that in this region there is a scarcity of water where these rocks are present. Largely the granitic rocks when you look at, which is very, very hard rock. Now, as I have seen, when I will further explain that some rocks are softer also, but largely these are crystalline. Now, there is no strata. When we look at the sedimentary rocks having the layers, but the igneous rocks having no layer, do not having the strata, so do not occur in strata, and therefore nor do they contain fossil. And because they are made up of the very heated materials, तो उस heat में चीज़ें जल के राख हो जाएंगी, एसिड्स में कन्वर्ट हो जाएंगी, फॉसिलाइजेशन के चांसेस भी नहीं है. So that's why there is a lack of fossils. This is the another feature. Now when you look at these igneous rocks can be divided on the basis of mineral composition also. Further I will explain the classification in detail. There are various criteria or the basis on which we can classify the igneous rocks. Igneous rocks को हम लोग अलग अलग क्राइटेरिया के आधार पे क्लासीफाई कर सकते हैं. Okay. Now when you look at, जैसे एक आइडिया दे रहा हूँ, if the silica proportion is more, the igneous rocks are more acidic, the property change. So when the silica composition is more, the rock is acidic. When the silica composition is less, the rock is largely basic. Okay. So I had given you the idea that when the elemental composition change, the property of these rocks change. They have the dark color, sometimes they have the light color. Why? As I have said, acid igneous rocks such as granite are less dense and are lighter in color than the basic rocks. The basic rocks having the dark color. So sometimes the elemental change led to the change in the properties of the rocks. The basic rocks, as I have said, in the basic rocks, the major elements are the iron, aluminium, as I have said, magnesium. Thus these are denser and the darker in color. So igneous rocks, when you look at, we can classify the igneous rocks based on the mineral composition or the chemical composition, which element is abundant, that determine their characteristics. And further in the next class I will explain what the classification of the igneous rocks on different basis. On the basis of origin I will explain. Further, on the basis of the chemistry and chemical composition, I will explain. Further, on the basis of silica composition, I will explain. Okay, and then on the basis of the grain size, again I will explain. तो इग्नियस रॉक्स को अलग अलग तरीके से एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हो. इसको क्लासीफाई जियोग्राफर ने अलग अलग बेसिस पर किया है कि इनके पार्टिकल के साइज़ कितने हैं, या इनमें सिलिका किस रॉक्स में, इग्नियस रॉक्स में ज़्यादा है, किस में कम है, उसके आधार पे हम क्या बोल सकते हैं. या फिर केमिकल कॉम्पोजिशंस क्या है, उसके बेसिस पर कैसे बता सकते हो केमिस्ट्री के आधार पे. और ये जो क्लासिफिकेशन है, यहाँ से डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन आएंगे in the mains as well as pre, but in the next class I will explain this. Okay, तो मैंने PDF शेयर किया है, read that PDF. Okay, go through that and read the introductory part before the next class, and come in the next class after reading that, and if you have a doubt you may ask. Okay, so I will continue this session tomorrow. Okay, look at the classification of igneous rocks. What I have said, that igneous rocks are a product of what? It forms as a result of solidification of magma or the lava. I have used the word. So what I have said, that when the magma started moving upward, sometimes the magma is so much so viscous that it started solidifying below the crust even, or within the crust. Below the crust in the mantle or within the crust. crust के अंदर ही solidify होने लगता है. Okay, it started solidifying within the crust. When it started solidifying within the crust, we called intrusive volcanic rock. Intrusive volcanic rock. Okay, but sometimes this magma erupt in the form of lava over the surface and form a volcanic or extrusive rock. It form extrusive volcanic rock. So when you look at the term of origin, how this igneous rocks forms, we can call it intrusive as well as extrusive. We also called it volcanic, the extrusive, because volcano is a triangular structure, conical structure which form over the crustal rock or the surface of the earth. Then the extrusive igneous rocks are also known as volcanic, as a product of lava, solidification and cooling of lava. They forms. While these intrusive are also known as plutonic. It forms due to solidification of magma within the crust. Okay, within the crust. So the igneous rocks, on the basis of their origin, in terms of origin, there are two types of igneous rocks: plutonic or intrusive, volcanic or extrusive. Okay, now when you look at what are the major features of this rock, as I have said that these are igneous rocks formed at the some depth in the earth crust. I had explained, but these rocks forms over the crust, not within, not in the depth. Molten rocks poured out of volcanoes as lavas, and due to the cooling and solidification of lavas, such rocks forms. Now what I have written here, अब ये देखो, ये अंदर में सॉलिडिफाई होकर बनते हैं. ओके, कूल्ड एंड सॉलिडिफाइड स्लोली, क्योंकि अर्थ के क्रस्ट के अंदर ही सॉलिड हो रहे हैं, तो इनको सॉलिडिफिकेशन में टाइम लगता है, क्योंकि विद इन द क्रस्ट क्या है, टेम्परेचर स्लाइटली हाई है। बट अगर वही लावा सरफेस पर आएगा तो एयर के कांटेक्ट में आएगा या वाटर के कांटेक्ट में आएगा, क्योंकि सरफेस के ऊपर वाटर है, एयर है। अगर वोल्केनिक इरप्शन ओशन में हो तो वहाँ वाटर के कांटेक्ट में लावा आएगा, उसका सॉलिडिफिकेशन और कूलिंग फास्ट होगा। बट अगर टेरेस्ट्रियल वोल्केनिक इरप्शन हुआ लैंड के ऊपर तो वहाँ एयर है, सो comparatively the lava gets solidified quickly, and that's why what we find that here the size of crystal in the plutonic rocks is big and easily recognized. Look at why the size of crystal is big and easily recognized, because here the magma solidified and cooled slowly. सो क्या होगा, पार्टिकल्स को टाइम मिलेगा अरेंज होने के लिए और वो क्रिस्टल बनाएंगे। क्रिस्टल कैसे बनते हैं? ड्यू टू अरेंजमेंट ऑफ द पार्टिकल और द एलिमेंट्स विच इज प्रेजेंट इन द रॉक्स। नाउ हियर द कूलिंग इज रैपिड, द सॉलिडिफिकेशन इज रैपिड, तो वहाँ अरेंजमेंट के लिए मॉलिक्यूल्स को टाइम कम मिलेगा, इसलिए वहाँ क्रिस्टल के साइज स्मॉल होते हैं। So what is the basic difference between the plutonic as well as the volcanic rock or the intrusive and the extrusive rock? The size of crystal varies. Why? Because here the molecular arrangement took time, because the solidification and cooling is a slow process. Here solidification and cooling is much faster. Why? Because the lava is in contact with the water and air, cools fastly, and that's why there is a less time for the molecular arrangement and the crystal formation. Okay, now the intrusive rocks. What is the example of intrusive rocks? Granite, diorite, gabbro. These are some of the intrusive rocks. These are the igneous intrusive rocks, plutonic हैं ये। तो इनमें देखोगे क्रिस्टल के साइज बड़े होंगे, ग्रेन साइजेस लार्ज होगा इन कंपैरिजन टू दीज रॉक्स। अभी देखो यहाँ रायोलाइट, अभी मैं बताऊंगा व्हेन यू लुक एट फर्दर, सम रॉक्स आर फेल्सिक, सम इग्नियस रॉक्स आर फेल्सिक, सम इग्नियस रॉक्स आर मैफिक। सिलिका कंटेंट वेरी करते हैं, उसके कारण इग्नियस रॉक्स सिलिका कंटेंट में वेरिएशन के कारण इग्नियस रॉक्स को हम अलग अलग कैटेगरीज में डिवाइड करते हैं, फेल्सिक, मैफिक, अल्ट्रा मैफिक। व्हेन द सिलिका कंटेंट इज वेरी लेस इट इज नोन एज अल्ट्रा मैफिक, ओके, बट व्हेन द सिलिका कंटेंट इज वेरी हाई इट इज नोन एज फेल्सिक। तो क्या है कि अभी अगर आप देखोगे रायोलाइट, यहाँ लिखा है रायोलाइट, रायोलाइट इज एन एक्सट्रूसिव इग्नियस रॉक, एंड रायोलाइट का कॉम्पोजिशन देखोगे ये फेल्सिक है। रायोलाइट इज अ फेल्सिक बिकॉज इसमें सिलिका भी ज़्यादा है। रायोलाइट कैसे बना? जब लावा सरफेस पर आया, कूल हुआ, उससे बना ये रॉक। इस रॉक में सिलिका ज़्यादा है इसलिए ये फेल्सिक भी है। लेकिन रायोलाइट और ग्रेनाइट में तुम कंपैरिजन करोगे, ग्रेनाइट, ग्रेनाइट क्या है? इट इज एन इंट्रूसिव रॉक, इट इज ऑल्सो फेल्सिक। इसमें भी सिलिका परसेंटेज हाई है, इसमें भी सिलिका परसेंटेज हाई है, बोथ आर द फेल्सिक। बट रायोलाइट का ये इंट्रूसिव फॉर्म है ग्रेनाइट, यहाँ ग्रेन साइजेस लार्जर होते हैं। रायोलाइट में ग्रेन साइजेस देखोगे तो क्या होगा? स्मॉलर। क्यों होगा स्मॉलर? क्योंकि ये एक्सट्रूसिव वोल्केनिक है। ग्रेनाइट में देखोगे यहाँ ग्रेन साइजेस, क्रिस्टल की साइजेस क्या होंगी? बड़ी होंगी, बिगर और लार्जर। गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? मेरी बात समझ आ रही है कि नहीं? ओके अभी देखो एंडेसाइट के बारे में बात करें। एंडेसाइट, लिसन वेरी केयरफुली और ये फ्लो चार्ट बना लेना जो मैं यहाँ बना रहा हूँ। एक नीचे मैफिक लिखना, ऊपर एरो देना, फेल्सिक लिखना, फेल्सिक के सामने रायोलाइट, एरो देकर लिखना ग्रेनाइट, और ऊपर में ऐसे एरो दे सकते हो, ऐसे मैं फ्रेश लिख दूँ। लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड लाइक दैट। Further, I will explain the mafic and felsic. Grain size or the size of crystal. Is it visible? कलर दिख रहा है? Both are the felsic rock, but here the grain size is smaller. Here the grain size is bigger because arrow is moving in this direction. Getting my point? Now, andesite, अब देखो, is another extrusive rock, और मैं अभी बता दूंगा. Now, diorite. Diorite is an intrusive rock. Again, the grain size is increasing here. Silica content, when you look at, is almost comparison to rhyolite is equal or slight bit less. Now, when you look at basalt, it is a volcanic or extrusive rock which is mafic in nature. Silica content is less, is converted into this, converted into gabbro. Gabbro is equivalent rock to the basalt. Equivalent rock means silica content is almost equal in the gabbro, but it is what? It is a plutonic rock. So basically, when you look at these three, when you look at, are the extrusive, बराबर मतलब एक दूसरे का इक्विवेलेंट, ये एक्सट्रूसिव है, बराबर का मतलब यहाँ पर क्या है कि ऑलमोस्ट सिलिका कंटेंट में जब बात कर रहा हूँ, एक्सट्रूसिव प्लूटोनिक रॉक्स, एंड दीज आर इंट्रूसिव, सॉरी प्लूटोनिक नहीं, वॉल्केनिक लिखना है, intrusive plutonic rocks. Getting my point? The granite is the equivalent to the rhyolite. It is the rhyolite equivalent, but the property changed. Here the grain sizes are smaller, here the grain sizes are bigger. When you look at the andesite, equivalent to the intrusive rock is the diorite, the basalt, the gabbro. Okay, so when you can compare here, this is a comparative chart. What do you observe here, they have more silica, felsic, they have comparatively less silica. And that this silica content, when you look at, when the silica is more, here the silica percentage is more, here the silica percentage is less, percentage of silica is less. Now when you look at, when this rocks melted, what we observe due to melting, the magma which forms is more viscous magma. And that's why granite is a plutonic, वो अंदर में ही solidify हो जा रहा है. But when you look at the mafic rock, and this mafic rocks when melt, the magma is more watery, and that's why flood basalt province बताया था, ये क्या होते हैं basalt watery, जब ये मेल्ट होते हैं तो क्या ये स्प्रेड करते हैं, लॉन्गर डिस्टेंस कवर करते हैं और प्लेट्यूज बनाते हैं. जैसे डेक्कन लावा प्लेट्यू इज अ basalt प्लेट्यू. गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? यस और नो? समझ आ रहा है आप लोगों को क्या बोल रहा हूं मैं? So this is a chart through which you get a multiple question in pre में बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन आएंगे यहाँ से. What I have discussed this chart, I had compared here the mafic rock, the felsic rock. I had compared there a smaller crystal size rocks, the bigger crystal size rocks. I had discussed here the extrusive and the intrusive, और extrusive का equivalent rock मैंने आपको explain किया. Okay, so that flow chart will give you a multiple idea. इससे कई सारे ideas develop होंगे. So must keep in mind this. एक diagram से कई answers कर सकते हो, and you can represent a multiple idea through a single flow chart or diagrams. This is the beauty of geography. You have to present your ideas in a limited words, because there is a scarcity of time during the examination. There is a limit, time limit, and within the time limit, within the word limit, you have to answer your question. So you have to generate multiple ideas how you can represent your answers in a limited word, because flowchart and diagram is not counted as a word. Okay, so make this flowchart.